Good evening, students. I hope you all are doing well. And today we are going to talk about purpose of the passage. Now, when we talk about the purpose of a passage, it is very important to understand that how a purpose is actually determined. Now, if you look at this picture, you will see that there is a panorama of nature, but the photographer is trying to just capture the bit in the frame. So a picture can be taken in different types, but it is just they are just looking at the picture that is more important. So this is about the purpose as to why something is used, or what is the purpose of a passage, how do we determine the purpose of a passage, and how does it actually help. So this is about the main thing about a passage, but that we should actually understand. Otherwise, we might, in the long run, we might not understand. Rather than just looking at answering the questions, it is very important to understand why a topic has been written for a better understanding. So with that, we also know the background of the right now we are talking about the passages, but in general I'm talking about the novels that you read, or short stories that you read, whatever you read. The purpose of the passage is really important, or the novel or the piece is really important. It helps you to understand things better. Now, how do you determine a purpose of the passage? Let's go and check. Okay, so if a reading passage provides facts about a particular subject or tells readers how to do something, the author's purpose is to explain or inform. Now we have two different types of the purpose is to why somebody has written a topic, or why somebody has is trying to inform us. Is because basically the purpose is that. So when the purpose is that, so obviously that is what is expected from the person. So the most important part here is to explain, or the most important part is that we explain or inform. This is the most important part here. Clear? And the next part is, if a reading passage contains many opinions or tries to get readers to do something, buy something, or believe in something, the author's purpose is to persuade. Now, when we talk about persuading, we always talk about how the author is going to convince the other person to do something, or believe in something. Like, it is the same way how we make people convert their religions, or how we make people invest in new things, or how we start believing in some new things, is because the persuasion, or how the person has been convinced, or how he agrees with the whole concept, is really important. So that is about the perception or the persuasion of the topic. The next one is that what is implied as a main idea of the passage. Whenever we talk about the main idea of the passage, we always have to know that what is it that has convinced the person to talk about this or anything else. So let us see what it is. The main idea of a sentence or passage is its preliminary point or argument. You always will find the main idea or the purpose of the passage in the first two lines of a paragraph or a passage or a novel. We will be able to understand that. So let's see how it is. An implied main idea is the primary point of a sentence or passage that is not clearly stated, but instead deduced from surrounding details. Now, when something is spoken about, the main idea of the passage is given something, and then they slowly talk things around it. So we are basically getting informed, and we are getting described as to what is about the whole thing. So that is how you have to deduce the main idea of the passage. What is the purpose of understanding vocabulary from the context? Whenever we are talking about the vocabulary, we need to understand that that vocabulary makes it more easier to understand, or to get a proper real detail about the whole thing. For example, understanding vocabulary in context is when readers come across a word they do not know in a text. They use ideas in the sentence. Now, clues in the sentence. Now, when we talk about this, I'll tell you my experience, because from very young age we started reading books and textbooks. I mean, especially novels and stuff like that. So whenever we were asked to, in our school we had this. I come from an ICSE school, and we were always given this task of picking up 5 words from the dictionary and doing it every day. So what we used to do is we used to do that, but we were never used to be do that. So we were very lazy, lethargic in doing that. So what we used to do is, on the last day of our holidays, because dad will come and check after 1 week. I mean, we went on a summer holidays to my grandmother's house, and we never had all these tabs and stuff like that, neither phones. So speaking was a rare thing that used to happen. That used to happen once in a month, or in 15 days. Dad used to call on the on the local number. So I mean, the telephone, the hand thing. So it was not us. So just before the we would go back to our place, go back to my home. I would, me and my brother would write down all the words, randomly pick up five words from the dictionary, and then we used to complete the word. So it never helped, because proper foundation was never made. We try to learn words, but it was not done in a proper way. So anything that is not done properly never works out. So that is what happens with us also. So as I grew up, but reading was one thing which I never stopped. So more of it was, I used to guess those words, and I used to think that guessing the words can make my work better, and I used to guess contextually. Sometimes I used to get understand contextually something. But once I became an English teacher, and once I started looking into the vocabulary and stuff like that, then I understood that contextually, if my vocabulary would have been better, the understanding of the passage would have been more better, would have been more good. I mean, and we grasp so many things. Like when we are reading something, we keep imagining it. We keep imagining the picture. Like it could be a scenery, it could be a tea mug, or anything. Whatever the person writes. I mean, the writer has the ability to give you that imaginative form of something. So I understood that if my vocabulary was good, or if I would have been I would have taken the pain to understand those words which I did not understand. So probably my understanding of the text would have been more better, of the novel would have been more better. So when you are doing the vocabulary in context, and when readers come across words and they try to imply them, or think that, use their logic and some parts in the text and try to make a meaning out of it, you will see that there is always a mistake that they do. Okay, so that is about guessing and then not trying to reach the right thing. So examining the context clues in a sentence or paragraph can help readers understand unfamiliar words. Yet you will not be able to get the complete meaning or the right meaning. So always understand, if you are thinking of contextually trying to understand what it means, and that you're going to get along well, understand that it is always not true. You could get into a soup. Okay, so let's go to the next one, and the next one is, how do you identify the author's purpose in a passage? How do you identify the author's purpose in a passage? In general, there are 3 basic reasons for an author to write something. Okay, let's come to this one. Why do you have to identify the author's purpose in a passage? See, looking at the passage, you will get to know, like if you are not reading from an editorial article, or if you are not reading from anything else, what you will understand is that you are basically reading from something that is more general. You are reading a novel, and have you ever imagined that whenever you are reading some novel or anything of that sort, you will see that the author is able to present only one kind of an outlook. It is very difficult for Sidney Sheldon to write something romantic and and saucy and sassy. It is not possible because he's so used to writing those thriller things and stuff. This is what gets onto him. Or thinking that, Nicholas Sparks would write some of those beauty thrillers. It is impossible because they have an attitude towards, bent towards writing that a particular kind of something, and then they start taking it. So, but how do you identify that author's purpose of a passage? Okay, let's talk about editorials, or let's speak about speeches, or let's take some random literature text, and we want to understand what the author's passage or the purpose of the passage is. Now, always understand that the author always writes from the surroundings. I, being an author myself, I will tell you that an author always writes things. There is a metamorphosis that happens in an author if they are writing a book, or if they are writing a biography, or if they are writing something. The beginning of the journey and the end of the journey is completely different. Okay, that's what happened to me. Apart from that, you will see that the author always takes, it takes the inputs from the surroundings, from the people he or she meets, from the conversations he or she makes, or things like that. So let's see what are the 3 basic reasons for an author to write something. Okay, so the first thing is to persuade their reader. Yes, when I'm writing about my biography, when I'm writing about some self-help book, I'm trying to persuade the reader that this is what is wrong, so come on, work on it. This is what is wrong, so come on, do something about it. You're persuading someone to buy something, you're persuading someone to take an action, you're persuading someone to pick up your goals and start running. So basically, you're persuading people why they should be doing something. The next one is to inform their reader. Is to basically, they describe a lot of things, they try to give a lot of information, they try to give a lot of inputs about a thing. They are basically descriptive about it. That is what is the purpose of the passage. The last one is to entertain their readers. Now, when you talk about entertainment, you talk about all those web series that you have read. They were once upon a time, they were books. So basically, the purpose of the writer is basically to entertain the reader. And when they entertain the reader, they understand that what are the elements that are required to entertain. So they might add some bold scenes, they might add some good conversations, they might add some small tidbits, and they will also add something always happening. Every page has something good or new to talk about. So that is what is a work of an entertainer. So that is what they will do if the author's intention is to entertain you. So these are the 3 things, PIE, that is very important when we are talking about the purpose of a passage. Now, so you can help your students remember the reasons for why authors write with this easy as PII acronym. So P is for persuade. The author shares his or her opinion with the reader and stuff like that. So other things go like that. Okay. So that is how you identify the purpose. How do you identify the purpose? Let's go further. How do you find the main idea of a passage? It is easy to identify the main idea that is directly expressed in the text. At times, main ideas are often found at the beginning of the paragraphs. Okay, if you read the first 2 or 3 lines in the beginning of the paragraphs, you will get to understand what is the author talking about, or what is he intending to talk about. You will understand it. So be clear of it. So the first sentence often explains the subject being discussed in the passage. Main ideas are also found in the concluding sentences of a paragraph. Always understand, whenever a passage is being divided whenever a passage is divided into a paragraph, always there has to be a breakage in the thought process, or either there's a shift from the one subject to the another, a sub-subject probably. So always understand, whenever you're reading a passage, always understand why the paragraph has been broken. If the paragraph is never broken if they're going to continuously talk about the same paragraph. But if they are going to add a new element in the paragraph, then definitely they can break the paragraph. So that is really important. And whenever you are breaking a paragraph, you will carry the last 2 lines idea into the new paragraph. So whenever you will see that there is a breakage in the paragraph, you will get a subtle idea about what they are going to say, talk in the next paragraph. That is can be derived from the last two lines of the earlier paragraph. So that is how it is. The main ideas are also found in the concluding sentence of a paragraph, because you generally conclude it, you generally give an a proper amalgamate everything, and you give that gist out of it. So that is how you are going to get the main idea from the concluding lines of a paragraph. The next one is that you have to also understand that you also have to understand, apart from the persuasion, the different things about the author, you also have to understand sometimes reading for the author's purpose is as simple as just that. You read and you figure out that the writer really hated the Red Sox and wanted to criticize the whole franchise. Other times it is not so simple, so it is good to have a technique to guide what you are or when you are looking for it. So sometimes you can just read the first 2 or 3 lines and understand what is the paragraph about, or why a topic has been written. But sometimes it can be difficult. So let's see what you are looking for and how you are going to look for it in the passages. So the author's purpose keywords are compare, contrast, criticize, describe and illustrate, explain, and identify or list. Or the next one is intensity. The last one is suggest. So when we are talking about this, we are going to understand that what are the keywords that the author is trying to use. Whether do you see a sort of comparison happening between the passages or between the paragraphs? We need to understand, are there elements where there is comparison happening, or is there a contrast in the idea? Is there criticism? So there's different ways of putting a paragraph. For example, if we have 3 A, B, C candidates, individuals who are writing a topic, who are writing a paragraph on a particular topic, do you think all the 3 of them will be writing in the same tone or in the same purpose? No, they will differ. If you are asking about what are the advantages or disadvantages of pollution, if you ask essays like that, then probably you might find some random stuff which everybody would be talking about. But otherwise, if you talk about your perspective of pollution, or it is not generic. When you are talking about generic topics, probably people would give you the same kind of a review, or if they would probably give you the same kind of an output. But if you are talking about something special, and if you're talking about something really meaningful, or if you're talking about something very to the point, then it will differ. When I'm saying give your viewpoint or your perspective or stuff like that, or your perception about pollution, so you will be surprised at the kind of perceptions people would give at the end of it. I might give something called the worst thing is happened, and we now have to buck up and pull our socks up and try to do something for the environment. Somebody else might write that this is the end of the world and nothing is going to happen good, we have just lost it. Or for example, if somebody talks about your perception about coronavirus before and after corona, so probably you would talk about how people were suddenly they got this chance to introspect their lives, to retrospect the way they were living, their lifestyles, and how distant they were becoming from their own family members, and how they became a better person. They became more they could understand their partners better, their children better, their friends better, their people better. So what, when you talk about a perception, it could be your perception. If you have a positive outlook, your perception would be more positive. If you have a negative outlook, your perception would be more negative, or it would be more pessimistic. But you can also be optimistic about the whole thing. So that is how a perception changes. So whenever you talk about the perceptions, probably you would see one dimension of it. Somebody who is a young teenager of 15, 17 years or 18 years, they would write about how boring the life is, or how they are missing their friends and the life that they used to have. But talk about somebody who is in their 40s and, late for 30s and in the 40s, they would talk about how life has suddenly given them a chance to just reinvent themselves, or to just look at themselves, or to just um, get just to stop and to think what you have done. So there are different kinds of perceptions that a person has when you talk about something or about thing. So now when an author writes his thing, so definitely he would compare between two individuals or two different situations or two different events, or he would contrast. He said this happened here and this happened here, that is how they're going to contrast, or they're going to criticize the whole thing, that the government did not do anything, the people are so miserable and they are so careless, all that stuff. So they would criticize, and some people would just describe, to illustrate with examples of as how life changed or how life did not change. Or somebody might talk about how the environment has suddenly started breathing, and how there is more rain this year, and for the last 10 days it has been raining continuously without a stop, and how we see water and greenery everywhere, how getting to office has become easier because there's lesser vehicles on the road. So all thanks to corona. Okay, so that is exactly how people can write, people can think, people can perceive a situation both in positive and negative terms. Okay, so that is how an author puts down his perception in the better way. The next one is to explain a particular concept, explain a particular situation, explain a particular feeling. They keep explaining it so that you actually understand what is it that they felt, or from their cup of tea, what was it. Okay, so the next one is identify or list. So they might give you a series of things, just not perception. So they might give you lots of points as to understand what went wrong or what did not go wrong. The next one is to intensify. Whenever we are intensifying, we need to understand that we talk about intensity, about the intense feelings, about the we use paraphrases and stuff that intensify the meaning of the whole passage. So the last one is suggesting. Suggesting is you're hinting someone to take this option, you're hinting someone, you're suggesting something, could be direct or indirect way, wherein you are actually trying to get into the reader's mind, and you are trying to suggest them that this is how you should be doing. That's how the self motivation or self development books actually work, where the author suggests something, or they intensify something depending on how the author is trying to put down his own way of writing. So that is about, these are some of the things that you will find in every passage. You won't definitely find all these things in the same passage. You would definitely find them in bits and pieces in one passage. So you might find a describing something, or in one passage you might find a comparison thing going on. So depending on the author's perspective and thinking, probably this is how it goes. Okay, so next one, let's start about comparison. Whenever we are talking about, author wants to show similarities between ideas. He talks about statistical data. He talks about, he gives you a lot of events that, similarities, and it all goes on like that. The next one is when he gives a contrast. He talks about the difference between two ideas or three ideas, and he contrasting, contradicting. These are the kinds of things that he would do, where basically they are argumentative topics, where he contrasts from the main idea, or his argument is basically on two different levels. So that is basically a contrasting thing. So then he would give a lot of examples, incidences that will bolster his point of view and how he is going to go about it. Okay, so the next one is criticism. When we are criticizing something, author wants to give a negative opinion of an idea. They will try to give something negative, they will try to give you a lot of criticism about a thing or about a point or about an event. There's a lot of criticism given, or imagine the critics that you will have on a literature part, on an piece of work. So you get a lot of criticism. It's like that review after movie is produced. Yeah, it's been 6-7 months that a new movie has come to picture, has come to the cinema hall, because we don't have the cinema halls right now. But imagine, Rajiv Masand, or somebody talking about giving reviews, criticizing the actors, criticizing the acting skills, criticizing the script, the plot. They're giving their reviews about it. That is what his criticism is all about. How they were lethargic, or how the director did not have the depth in his thought, or blah blah blah. Okay, so that is about criticism. So the next one is about describing or illustrate. Now, wherever you have paint a picture of an idea, you talk about the minute details. Imagine if you're talking about reading something about Ayn Rand's Fountainhead, which is one of the best booksellers. I mean, one of the best booksellers, and also it is something that has to be, really. More which is also very much known for its detailed and some things like that. If you read it, you will read how finely everything has been spoken in detail, or how each incident has been described at length, or how the railing of a building has been described. Subtle minute details have been given about something. So that is about the describing or illustrating something. So the next one is explaining. When you're explaining something, you actually break down an idea into simpler terms. So what happens in a subject, in a textbook? What happens? You have the main topic, and then you have the subtopics, where they break down the topic, and then they will explain each one of you for your better understanding. So that is what an explanation does. The next one is identify the list. Now you have a series of ideas, and you tell a series of things, and then that is what you identify, or you have a list of things to talk about. For example, you're talking about the advantages of pollution. There cannot be advantages of pollution. Disadvantages of pollution. So you would give a list of things that, or what kinds of pollution. You would give a different types of things like air pollution, water pollution, everything. Sound pollution. There's so many kinds of pollution that we have. So you would talk about each one of them, and that is what a list is all about. Okay, so the next one is the intensity. Intensifying is basically want to make an idea greater. Imagine all those people who have watched Game of Thrones, or you have watched Bahubali, or anything. There are a couple of incidents that make the situation more intense, that make completely gratifies, or the gravity of a situation is very high, so that to understand that they are so important, and they are so specific, and how it is greater, and how the whole idea is so bigger in context. I mean, that is what. So intensify or intensity adds intensity to the text. They just pick up one topic, a random topic it could be, but the way it is explained, the way it is bolstered and intensified, that is what makes a topic very special. Next one is suggesting. When you suggest something, you're basically proposing an idea to buy something, proposing an idea to do something, proposing an idea to talk about your goals, or to uplift your goals or your ambition. It could be anything and everything. That is how there could be an indirect suggestion, or that could be a direct suggestion. So depends upon the book and the person who has done it. So that is about the suggestion. Now with this we understand. So let's start. How do we start the whole thing? So when we talk about anything, so we are going to talk about, I'm sorry. Now, when we are going to talk about something, when we are going to start something, we always have an idea, we always have a purpose. Now, breaking down all the points and coming down to the main thing, that what is the purpose of the passage, or what is the reason that we have something, we get to understand things, and we get to make things up, and that is how we are going to get the purpose of the passage. Now, once the purpose of the passage is done, we will talk about the why is it important, or why is it so particular that we should know the purpose of the passage. When we are talking about the reading passage, when we are talking about the reading passage, we are going to the reading passage. Purpose of this passage gives you the questions of why a topic has been written. Purpose of the passage always talks about why a past topic has been written or passage has been written. So where do we find this purpose of the passage? You will find it in the first two lines of the passage or the novel or the text that you are reading, and you will also find the last lines of the passage or the paragraph is really important. Now, you should always understand that no passage comes out of the blue. It is written by a person, by an author, and we need to understand that very carefully, that a passage always, has something to talk about. So why is it important to know the purpose of the passage? Or for the last half an hour, I have been giving you a lots and lots of details about the purpose of the passage. So once you understand the purpose of the passage, the next thing that you're going to do is to understand the central theme. Now, as we have discussed, Now, as we have discussed before, once we are going to talk about the purpose of the passage, the next thing that we are going to talk about is the central theme. Now, we have understood that the passage, the author is going to talk about something and stuff like that, and that is done. But once you have picked up the topic, we have also discussed about how an perception is, or how an perception or how an idea is developed. So that is what is the central theme of the passage. We will be going to do a detailed work on central theme in our next class on Friday. So that is about the central theme. The last one is the style and tone. We are going to have a detailed session on style and tone too, so there is nothing to worry about. Okay, so we will be having a detailed report on the style and tone of the passage, and we are going to understand how the topic has been written. So when we talk about how the topic has been written, we have to understand that what is the style that has been used. We have already spoken about three different kinds of passages, that the purpose why a passage is written. So now we have persuade, we have inform, and we have entertain. So once we understand, this style can be divided into 3 or 4 parts. That is, whether it is a descriptive passage or whether it is a what is it called, descriptive passage is always informative passage, whether it's an argument or whether it is just a scientific research paper. So now once the style is understood, we have to talk about the tone. What is a tone? Whenever we express something that has a tone, it could be a single thing can be told in different ways. So let us understand what are those different ways. Let us understand what are those different types of things that we have understood. So we are basically talking about things like we have the style and tone. I mean, what is it about? How is it being spoken about? And what is the tone that we are using? For example, a simple word like get out, when I shout at it and say get out, it has a different tone. So it is more harsh, it is more like a command, and it is more like, hurting. But when I say, can you please go out of the class, or can you please go out of the room, so it is not harsh. It might not be soothing, but at least it is not harsh. So the tone makes a difference. So what is the tone when we talk about in a passage? Tone in a passage has to do more about the way it is described, whether it is spoken positively, whether it is spoken negatively, whether it is spoken, you know, on a neutral basis, or what kind of a thing it is. Now, when I was talking about the style, now, whenever we are going to talk about the style, we have to understand the author uses these different ways to talk about the style. Okay, they talk about the different style, and these are the words that they will use. I'm sorry. These are the different things that the author uses to basically show his style, whether he is comparing stuff and he's talking about, whether he is contrasting stuff and he's talking about, or he's criticizing the thing, whether it is an argument. So whether it is, if it is an argument, then he would criticize the contrasting idea. If it is a contrast, then definitely we have to check that whether he is criticizing it, or he's just giving it as a point of reference to understand that this is where it is going wrong. So we need to understand all that stuff. So the author uses these kind of things to understand the tone of the passage. So once the author has decided to give the purpose of the passage, the next thing is the central theme. And the central theme, he has to understand what is it he is going to take up. An author cannot take all of it together. Okay, he cannot take all the things together. He has to talk about one thing at a time. If he is talking about a descriptive passage or an informative passage, he has to use this. If he is talking about something to do with argumentative passages, he has to use something this. Okay, where he will compare, where he will contrast, and when he will criticize. So they are basically argumentative stuff. It talks about informative passages, and the last one is suggesting or something like that, intensify, identify. We are going to talk about scientific research papers. Okay, so generally when we are doing this kind of argumentative topics, we generally talk about general things like economy. We are going to talk about economics, social issues. Okay, and when we are going to talk about descriptive or explanative, we are going to talk about psychological, philosophical. Okay, we are going to talk about history. We are going to talk about literature. Okay, they're going to be more of explanation and stuff like that. And then when we are going to talk about intensify or suggest or something like that, we are going to talk about research papers, or works on earth sciences, life science, social science and physical science. You also talk about biological science. These are the topics that you're going to write about if you are going to use this. So these are the three types of things that can happen. With argumentative, you have this kind of passages. With informative, you have this kind of passages. And with scientific research, you have this kind of research papers. You will be talking about geography topics. You will be talking about biology, different kinds of species, different kinds of flowers, different kinds of animals, and things, so on and so forth. Okay, so these are something that they are going to use at length, and you have to understand. Now you might understand, you might feel that when the purpose of the what is the reason for knowing the purpose of the passage? Because if you don't know the purpose of the passage, it will be difficult for you to completely understand. Let's remove all this. If you don't know the purpose of the passage, it is going to be very difficult to identify as to why something has been written. And we are just not talking about passages, and we are just not talking about small things. We're talking of a text, of a speech. For example, we have a speech. Now when we talk about a speech, in the first 2 lines or 3 lines and in the excerpt, we will definitely know what the speech is about. For example, I'm going to talk about I have a dream. In the first 3 lines, you will see that Martin Luther King talks about, that this congregation is going to be one of the most important thing in the annals of history, and he talks about how they are deceived and stuff like that. So in the first beginning of the passage itself, when you have when you have something, then you are going to write about it, and you are going to understand it better, and you are going to make it more easier. So the moment somebody starts a speech, people generally get confused with speeches. They get really it really gets tough for them as to why a speech has been written. And because first thing is, speeches are written in native languages, and when you are speaking in a native language, the examples that a native speaker would take to connect with the people would be different. So it might be difficult for non-native speakers to understand, or to collaborate, or to get into the depths of what the author is trying to say. But otherwise, I would tell you that understanding the piece would not make much difference. For example, if you read a speech is generally one thing that it really is difficult, because people, if you read something of Churchill, or Roosevelt, or somebody of that sort, they have a sense of understanding on the subject, and the way they would speak or introduce it would be different. So the students might feel petrified or intimidated by the way they are going to introduce the topic. But there are many speeches that basically you will encounter also in the essay part, where you also require the purpose of the passage. Now when you know the purpose of the passage, then you understand that where is it going. Along with purpose of the passage, the central theme and the style and tone of the passage also adds substance, as to we get to know what kind of an tool to use, whether when you are, or what kind of a technique to use when we are trying to find the right answer. So it is really very important to understand that any topic that we start, any topic that we do, requires a thorough study of the purpose of the passage. I mean, thorough study about the purpose of the passage and the central theme, and also the style and tone. Now, coming down. as I have always spoken at length that basically reading is basically a skill, and trying to find these three things is also a skill. It is not something that you will just read and you will get it. It requires time, effort, and energy to make sure that you gain this skill, you gain the expertise, you gain that keen eye to find the purpose of the passage, to identify, to to look for the right words, to look for the right sense. It is very important that you gain that, and it only happens when you keep reading different stuffs at length. I know it could be, if you are interested, and whatever you are interested in, always try to keep reading it, and you will get to know that how the purpose of the passage is done, and how the purpose of this passage should be derived, or can be derived, or is derived. So this is really very important to understand it. So please understand that the purpose of the passage also helps in making the flow chart. So once you get to know what is the purpose of the passage, so the way you use the techniques, either it is skimming or scanning, it becomes easier, and it becomes more accurate, and making the flow chart becomes really very important. What do I mean by making flow charts is that whenever you have a passage, now a passage is basically put like this, with five lines intervals. You will have lines like this. So when you have something like this, what you have to do is, on the top of the passage, in most of the passages, there'll be excerpts. When the excerpt is given, we actually get to know why a passage has been written, or why a passage has been, used, or why a passage has been described. So now, using your three techniques, whether the passage has been used for persuasion, information, or entertainment, you have to create a plan about how to go about it. If it is a literature topic, yeah, at length we discussed about the different kinds of passages that you will have. I mean, next class we will discuss the kinds of passages you will have in that, and how the purpose of the passage and the central theme of the passage will really help you. You will get to know that on an SAT there are around 52 questions that you have to cover in 65 minutes. That means it does not leave you more than 12 minutes for one passage, provided each passage has around 10, 9, varies from 10, 9, 11 questions. If that happens, we will not be able to understand that. Okay, so we are going to segregate, and we are going to understand that you have around 65 minutes, and you just have 52 questions to answer. And so in this, you have to understand that you have to manage time, so that you are able to answer the questions properly. You are able to you're able to manage your time, so that you can complete all the answers. Okay, so getting this purpose of the passage, or the central theme, or the style and tone will really help you to answer the questions faster. When I say 52 questions in 65 minutes, you will not have more than 75 seconds for each answer. That is a very thing. And if you are talking about ACT, that also has the same kind of a thing. The reading has, I hope, around 40 questions. There are, I think, 4 passages that are given. So in both the cases, what you have to do is, you have to develop the skill. You have to make sure that at a glance you are able to understand, you are able to postmortem what is the most important thing required in a topic. Now, for understanding, we started when we have to go about it, we have to read different stuff. You people can start reading the editorials in a newspaper. If you guys are not getting newspapers to your home, you can just take out the New York Times, or some random editorials on the net, Times magazine, or Times paper, the Sun paper in the UK, all these papers, and you can start reading the editorials. You can also read the Hindu newspaper editorial, but I have not suggested any other paper, because editorials you can pick up from Economic Times, Telegraph, and the Statesman or from Deccan Chronicle, the editorials is fine, because basically the editorials are written by prominent authors who are dignitaries, and they actually give a point of view. And also the vocabulary is very important when we are talking about reading passages, because the vocabulary gives you the efficacy to work smarter. If you know the right usage of words, you will be able to tap the answers more better. You'll be able to go about it more in a better manner, is what I feel or what I think. Okay, so that is about the purpose of the passage, and the time management that you have to inculcate to make sure that your answers come in the right, they complete on time and stuff like that. Apart from that, I would also like to talk about the different kinds of passages that you will encounter on the SAT or the ACT. There are basically 5 different topics that you will encounter in an SAT exam, and they are basically, one chapter comes from the US literature or world literature. Now this history, I mean, they're basically history, so it is a bit difficult. I mean, they are intense and stuff like that, so you need to understand the background and stuff like that. So that is one thing. Then the next one comes, the 2 passages come from the scientific passages, so they're basically research work, or descriptive model. They're giving more information about scientific topics, or they're giving more information about a particular drug, or about a particular plant, animal, flower, anything and everything. Okay, that will be 2 topics. And then in the next 3 topics, one topic is going to be a speech, one is going to be a literature, and the other one can be anything. So when we are doing, one is a speech, one is a literature, one is a history, and 2 are from scientific topics. Now when you have 5 different topics, take this journey as an take this journey as a learning way, where you can have, when you are doing a lot of question papers, you'll be able to accumulate a lot of knowledge, you'll be able to gather a lot of information, you'll be able to get a lot of different things coming up. Because what I tell you is, this kind of information that you're going to get, or this kind of topics that you're going to exposed with, is not possible to get everywhere and anywhere unless you're preparing for your SAT, because we generally don't get hold of this kinds of topics. So it's better when you're going to the US and the world history, I suggest that go through those US history lines, where you can actually pick up a lot of stuff, and you can actually use them to use them in your regular these things, where just give it a read when you're reading the US history. Just give it a read. This will also help you to use them anywhere in your discussions, in your essays, or in your speaking communication, where conversation, rather than communications, conversation, you can use it, and you can just play with the information. The kind of information that you're going to gather is going to be amazing. So please make it a point that when you are reading further, the reading passages, I know at some point you would feel fatigue seeping in, because we are not basically native speakers of English, so the kind of English that you will encounter might be difficult and different. So you might feel fatigue, the vocabulary would eat you away, it might take you some time before you get a hang of the vocabulary, and you might not like to use it. I mean, you might not be so willing to experience it, but when you get a hang of it, it is going to be more easier, especially when you're dealing with literature topics. If you are getting from the modern literature, it is fine. Otherwise, the literature is not such an easy thing to crack upon or crack down, so you might need some skill. So the best way to gain the skill, the expertise, to breaking down the content, and to to understand it, to get at a glance finding the right information, then you have to have to understand that, we are going to, you have to understand that you need to gain that as a skill. You need to buck up, and you need to start working on those passages. Read as much as you can, and don't mind even if you have just 5 right answers in the whole passage. Okay, just make sure that you're doing as many passages as possible. You will see a lot of them coming up in the next few days on the Yep Master application. You will see a lot of tests. You can have self-assessment tests and lots of things coming up. We'll have a library also soon where you need not go anywhere else. You can just click on the links and you can start reading. There are already some links on the website, on the application, where you can read a lot of textbooks from the day one. So just kickstart your work, and let's start working, and then understand that it is going to be a life turning process, because it is going to help you understand, it's going to help you in your in the long term process, and it is going to really make your journey a beautiful one. I hope this session was informative. I was able to share with you a lot of things as to why I was doing the purpose of the passage, why was I determined to do a complete session on the purpose of the passage. Please understand that this is just the beginning, and let's start. You really have to put in some effort before you can actually do it well. Okay, so that's for today. I hope this session was informative and it was useful to you. Thank you so much. I loved talking to you and giving this session. Thank you.